on their
Right.
own dime, however they want.
Exactly, and I mean,
And Edgerton could also look at it. I'm sure they've talked to Edgerton, but let's face it, Edgerton has certain benchmarks inside the intermodal that it must reach before it gets repaid from all those funds. And I think the first point is 1.5 million square feet of warehouse space. So
Yep.
if we're competing against Edgerton, I don't see them going outside to develop outside those boundaries when they get money for developing inside the boundaries and they have 1,100 acres to build. So I just think right now, this is a non-starter. Again, if they want to do the whole thing themselves at their own cost and use the existing, gravel road, then I guess, there's not a lot we can do about that, but I guess that they would not want to do that.
Yeah. Well, I would suggest at this point, since council meeting is supposed to have started a minute ago, that we go ahead and wrap up. Mike, you can share the presentation with everybody.
Yes.
Email it to us.
Absolutely.
I think that there's probably interest in continuing to look, but I think that there's misgivings, serious misgivings about the A2 and B2 plans. So I think that's where we're at right now, for the most part. Is that a fair assessment?
I'd also like to add, though, when we look at these again, I'd also like to look at 20-year revenue streams, because there will be costs that come beyond that 10-year scope that weren't included in this. So those figure into calculations because everything goes long term. We're not planning on 10-year partnerships with and beyond.
Yeah. Anybody else?
yeah, one other thing, Cheryl, you and I talked about this, and I don't know how we incorporate that into this, but I'd like to see a proposal, and maybe it's more of a recommendation from staff, that has gates within this policy to say, because we know, let's just say this project was approved and next year they open. Well, we know they're not going to have 400 to 500 employees likely. There's going to be things that are not in place. So for us to grant a 10-year abatement, assuming that on day one they're going to be where the commitment is, I think is foolish. So I would like to see some sort of gated proposal or recommendation that says when you're at 25% staff, maybe this is what you get versus when you're at full staff.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll have to wrap it up now.
Can I state one more thing? I would like to
Briefly.
see something that goes back in time and says what was projected, for instance, on Coleman, and what has actually happened. Because I can tell you that I watched that development from the beginning. It was also, I think, appraised at $54 million. Immediately, the lawyers got involved, and they got the appraised value down at $34 million. The number of jobs were, 400 to 600. And I went through the tour, as did you, on the first day that we raised our hand right before that. And, they were at, as I recall, 150 full-time employees starting at $12.50 an hour or $12 an hour. And, 250 part-time employees starting at $9 an hour no benefits. So there's no way that will ever pay for itself, and add to this community. So I think really we need to go back and see what happened, what was projected at Coleman, and what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Mike,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
All right, it is a little bit after 7:04 on Monday, so Gardner City Council will come to order. Everyone please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to begin this evening with a presentation. It'll be a presentation of the 2012 City Financial Statement and Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Good evening, Laura Gorley.
Good evening, Mayor and governing body. This is the 9th year that the city's prepared the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and I know some of you are new and there's people in the audience, so I'll briefly discuss that Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and we will be submitting it to the Government Finance Officers Association for an award for excellence in financial reporting. We have received that 8 consecutive years. And that particular award is to encourage and assist state and local governments to go above and beyond the requirements of generally accepted accounting principles and to evidence the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, and to recognize when individual governments do that. So the Certificate of Achievement is the highest, most prestigious award you can get for financial reporting. Over 70% of all cities and 45% of all counties with populations in excess of $50,000 participate, as well as 42 state governments. The last statistics on the GFOA website state that there are approximately 3,600 participants annually. Of that, there are only 25 cities in Kansas that receive that award, and we're one of them. The others in this area are Lawrence, Leawood, Lenexa, these larger entities. With that, I will turn this over to Mr. Ben Hart from Allen Gibbs & Hulick to discuss our audit findings and anything else he'd like to say.
Good evening, Mr. Hart.
Good evening.
Good to see you again.
And I'm not going to start just because Laura's here to compliment her. Her staff did a remarkable job putting up with us and our thousands of questions. Anytime you go through as a new audit firm, a new client, you're pressed with a lot of scrutiny toward the client to understand a lot of the processes. And if you're not familiar with what we do, we break our audit down into 3 sections. Planning, which is where we go through your internal controls. How does it look? How does it compare with a lot of entities that we have already audited? And then the field work, which is really where a lot of our detailed testing comes in with the financial statements. And then lastly, the report. We're at the report stage at this point. And before you is that comprehensive annual financial report. Also before you are 3 other items. My presentation tonight is not on PowerPoint, and it's also not to make you an accountant by any stretch of the imagination. We are required, though, in our correspondence to you to give you some information as far as what the outcomes of both the financial statement, internal control, and the A133 or the grant audit had entailed. I'm happy to say that there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies at all when it comes to the financial statements. I believe this is the first year. Last year you had 1, this year you've got 0. Laura and Jackie has done a remarkable job keeping pace and responding to any issues that we might feel like have come up, and we have none to report. As part of the packet you have there's a memo that starts with a letter-headed page. What this memo really does is give you the responsibilities of both management and the auditor, what we're required to do. It also conveys a few adjustments that were passed. They're considered immaterial to the financial statements. Second, just to remind you what our purpose was, the purpose of our audit is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financials are free from any material misstatements. And then in addition to that, if there are any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we report them to you as well as management. Like I said before, there were none, so there's none to report. Our opinion to the financial statement is a clean opinion. It's an unqualified opinion, and what that really means is that the financial statements are, in all material respects, free from any misstatements. There were 2 standards that were updated this year. As far as your financials are concerned, there were very minor changes, language changes on one of them, and the second had to do with the classification of a few funds, went from special revenue fund to a capital improvement fund. It didn't change the financial nature of the funds themselves, they just were located in a different portion of the report itself. That leads me to the grant audit, commonly referred to as an A133 single audit. This year, I believe, is the first year you've had one in a while.
Quite a while.
It was related to the KDHE revolving loan that was actually funded by the EPA. That was where 2 of our findings arrived as part of our audit. One had to do with Davis-Bacon, its prevailing wage requirement as far as the federal financial requirements. The other one was to having compliance over suspended or debarred parties. Now, I want to clarify, what our findings were related to